Welcome to the Perfectly Flawed podcast, where we share stories and conversations with amazing people who've achieved extraordinary success by embracing their struggles and imperfections. They've achieved what they have, not despite their perceived flaws, but because of them as well. On today's podcast, we talk to Paul Avins, who is a very successful entrepreneur, and he works with other entrepreneurs to become successful themselves. Whilst he's always been financially successful, he wasn't always happy and fulfilled, and his life and his purpose were utterly transformed after he suffered an asthma attack, which left him dead for a few moments. This near-death experience led to a complete change in his perspective on life, and he's going to share some wonderful insights on how to be happy and wealthy, healthy and wise. Very, very warm welcome to you, Paul.
Thank you.
Such a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, great to be here.
And I'm glad you're enjoying the studio environment.
I do. I like it, and I love the title too. You know, I think it's brilliant. Yeah, perfectly flawed. Nice.
Well, we'll dig into what that means to you,
Yes.
and as we go on. But you are somebody who helps and has helped thousands of people scale up their businesses.
Yes.
To 7 figures
Yep.
and beyond, I'm sure.
Yes.
And this is actually the first time we've met in person, which is.
It is. Yes, the
very
first face-to-face conversation outside of the coffee we had in the green room before. Yes.
Yeah, and we did have a great chat on Zoom. So
Yeah.
I'm really excited about taking some of those conversations a little bit further around the kind of perfectly flawed theme and
Yes.
what that means to you. Because I know that you have dealt in your very successful career and prior to that in your education with some real challenges, both about dyslexia.
Yep.
And your asthma, which has led to
Yes.
some critical moments, but ones that perhaps have ended up being gifts. And
Yeah. I mean, I think. I mean, you can go back. You can go back further. I always find it really interesting when people say, "Oh, you're really successful at this," because for me, I never feel that. I never feel like I'm successful. I just feel like I'm still desperately trying to reach a level of self fulfillment that I wished I had when I was a kid. So I've like when someone says, "Oh, you're really successful," I'm go, "Well, I'm really resilient. I'll give you that. I've been doing it for 20 years, so I've got very good at it because I've been doing." You know, I've been helping entrepreneurs to scale businesses and build teams and become great, kind of CEOs, which is my passion. And I've been doing that. And in the process of that, they talk about the 10,000 hour rule, like I've done way more than that in terms of whether it's standing on stage. Yeah, we were looking, my son and I were going through some old footage we found on a drive last night, actually, and there was pictures of me on stage at an event we called the Business Grand Prix, which was our first ever 3-day event, because I'm a bit of a petrol head, big into motor racing. And the event on any measurable metric was a pretty spectacular kind of, commercially anyway, wasn't successful, right? The fact that we pulled off a 3-day event in front of 60 people at that point in my career was a success. Commercially, really didn't generate very much money and confused most people because they thought they were buying a ticket to come and see a Grand Prix, and it wasn't, and all of that good learning stuff. But
was that one of your first ones?
I think, well, no, that was probably, we did that, it was the first 3-day event we'd ever run. I'd never run a 3-day event before that. But again, I always view things like that now very much as they're building blocks to become, to help you improve and get better. There was lots of things that were great about that, and would be when you look back at it. I think the challenge when you look back at stuff that you created as an entrepreneur, an artist, as an individual, you look back at old photos of yourself. You look back and you go, "Oh God, I can't believe I was like that at that point." But at that point, that was the best you were because that was the journey you were on. And I look back at it and go, actually, I'm really grateful now for that stepping stone, that experience, because I learned a lot through that experience, that 3-day event. That then helped me go on, and we run Europe's probably biggest entrepreneur retreat. It's a 4-day event now, and we run it in Spain. This year we'll run it in Tenerife. We've run it in Marbella for the last 10 years. And that event would not have been possible had I not started the journey with the 3-day Grand Prix, sort of 10, 11, 12 years ago.
Yeah.
And for me, I'm always very wary of when people say I've just reached a different level up the mountain, and therefore that's what I look. But where I'm looking at, but for me, I'm always and I think this is a trait of sort of people who are quote unquote, whatever you define success as. For me, if you take the definition from Napoleon Hill in Think and Grow Rich, then success is the progressive realization of a worthy ideal or a worthy goal, dream, right?
Right.
So chasing something that is important to you
Yeah.
is the definition of success. I think what's got warped in the last 10 years plus with social media is we've shifted the conversation to be success is about stuff. It's about, and I've fallen into that trap. I remember at one point in my life, I had 3 cars, and I was the only person in the house that could drive because my wife couldn't drive at the time. So we had 3, which was ridiculous. I look back and go, what on earth was that about? And
What was it about?
It was completely and utterly about ego, completely about going, oh, if I had 3 cars, then people would think I was good at what I did, and regardless of that story, right?
But I mean, so sorry to interrupt on that, but I think it's just important to notice that it's easy to kind of self-flagellate on that in retrospect and go, oh God, I was all ego-driven. But actually, that was really important, probably at that time, for you to go through that phase of saying it's not all it's, I can get the cars if I want them.
Yeah, but I think for me,
can fulfill that.
Well, dream. I think ego is ego. I think if you're going to stand on stage or be an artist or lead a room, if I've got, say for example, on retreat or scale up summit that we do, we'll have 100 successful entrepreneurs coming in wanting to be inspired, educated, motivated to play a bigger game, make more of themselves. If you don't have a level of ego, you're going to get crushed if you walk out on stage with the hi. Thanks for coming. You have to have a certain, what I call a stage version of you.
It's quite charismatic as well, isn't it? I think it gives some sort of dependability and some solidity. If somebody's kind of without ego, or their ego is quite low, they become a little bit almost weak for the audience. I think there's something to arrest upon or land on or put your focus on if the ego is strong, but obviously not when it eclipses.
I mean, I think so. We had to label it, right? Because so. Certainly at home things it was like, well, with my wife and things, it was like, who am I talking to now? Am I talking to Paul coach or Paul husband? Which one am I talking to? And also, which one am I being in that moment? And I think, for me, we kind of labeled jokingly as like Purple Paul. We're like, when Purple Paul shows up, he's gonna be an exaggerated version of what he normally is. I'm not different. If you met me off stage or you met me in a coffee shop, I'm me, but just the stage version or the speaker version is slightly more exaggerated.
Yeah.
Because it kind of needs to have that energy to get people what we call fired up, right? So we have a whole thing about getting people fired up. You got to be fired up. You got to be excited about your life. If you're not, you're going to get to the end of your life and go, I wasted the opportunity. And I think I'm on a mission to help people make sure that whatever the opportunities they're pursuing, that they don't waste it. And everyone's got a different opportunity, but it goes back to that. The thing I was saying a few minutes ago is I think we've lost sight of the fundamental principles of success as taught by people like Napoleon Hill and Dale Carnegie and all of those classics that I grew up on. I grew up listening to the likes of Zig Ziglar, Dale Carnegie, Brian Tracy, all talking about that success comes from a place of integrity, from a place of service, as Stephen Covey used to talk about.
Internal locus of control. It's not other people's idea of success, which is shoved down our throat all the time.
And that's the challenge. Is we are now surrounded by the media, the music industry, Instagram, all of those kind of things telling us what success should be.
Yeah.
And I've had a lot of clients who've got to a point. I remember one in particular, a client of mine got to a level of success where he bought himself a luxury car that he'd always wanted. And I think he owned it for about 2 weeks before he took it to the dealer and gave it back because he just went, this just isn't me. He said, I'd turn up at hotels and they'd want to put the car out the front. And he goes, it's not me. And I think sometimes, and I've done this, where you buy things because you want people to perceive you based on that narrative of what success is. And I think the journey I'm on certainly is to get more, more and more comfortable with just being who I am, regardless of, what car you drive, what clothes you live with. It's your definition of success. If success for you is living in Dubai, good for you. Great. Fantastic. If success for you is putting your kids through a private school because that they need the kind of attention that's what affords them and you can do it, good for you. If success for you is partying all the time, then great. There'll be a price for that. But just, like whatever it is, I think most of us have lost focus on that. And I think the
kind of innate sense of does success really mean to me? What is being fully successful for me, as opposed to what does society deem is successful?
Yeah, I mean, so let's go back for a second. I mean, I think the challenge is the bigger that you talk about shadow self. We were sort of touching on this before. I think if your ego gets too big, the shadow self gets really big, and then you have a problem, because that's the bigger you get, the bigger the shadow.
You cast a bigger shadow.
Yeah, and then you've got to deal with the internal demons and all the stuff that you don't like about yourself. And there's a really interesting story here, which is I got into the personal development world. The whole way I got into it was because I was broken, right? So I.
What do you mean by broken?
Yeah, so in my head, I was broken.
You weren't up to scratch.
No, I was. So I started my life out being adopted. So I was adopted at 6 weeks.
Right.
So I spent the first 6 weeks, and this took me years to understand that this was deep programming and coding for me that I had to get over. But I was literally, put up for adoption, and then I had about 6 weeks where I was on my own, and that first, so. I grew up with a fear of the cold. I grew up with a fear of people letting me down. I grew up with a fear of being isolated and being left alone, because, in my head, I had a story that I was abandoned.
These are fundamental drivers at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs, aren't they? Like, will I survive?
Yeah. And like you talk about Perfectly Flawed. It's like from that moment, I was trying to answer a question. I think most of us in our life are trying to answer a question. And if we can figure out what the question is we're trying to answer, it will start to unravel and unpick why we do what we do.
So was it, am I fundamentally flawed?
Actually, no, it was harsher than that. The question I was trying to answer was, what's wrong with me? Like, what's wrong with me?
Yeah.
Like, why would you give me up? Like, what's wrong with me?
The assumption already that there's something wrong.
Because like, if it wasn't broken, why would you give it up?
Yeah.
And then being, they talk about the first 6 weeks of bonding between mother and child and warmth and all of that. And all of that, I didn't have that. So I had this very odd internal thing of like, you have to learn to survive on your own. You have to be resilient. You have to get to a stage where you can depend on you because you can't depend on anyone else. All of that kind of programming was formed by the time I was 2 or 3.
Super primal, like at the primal, basic, biological level. You didn't have that kind of knowledge in the muscle, in the bones.
No, and I didn't even realize it. I remember my wife will tell you the story. We moved into a house and we got invited around to the neighbours to a barbecue, and sitting outside in the barbecue, and we're all being friendly. It's all great and everything's lovely, and the temperature starts dropping. And the temperature it dropped quite a lot, and it got cold, and I literally couldn't stop myself. I literally got up and just walked out. Right, I was like, I'm out, I'm gone, and it was like a primal thing in me, like I've got to get out of here.
Yeah,
and which led to an interesting conversation between me and my wife, who loves to make sure everyone's happy, and she's like, what? You just really rude to always. I was like, you don't understand. I had to get out of there. She's like, why? What was going on? And I had to have, I didn't have to have. I chose to have, help, support, therapy stuff to really understand what was going on with that. And it was a fear of the cold, and the cold going back to being, first 6 weeks of my life, and that being triggered, and being that was a fear of I might die, right? Which if you take the first 6 weeks of a baby, if you're worried you're going to die at that period, you spend a large amount of your life worried you're going to die.
Yeah.
We can talk about manifesting that if you want a bit later, but I think from that point,
I want to talk about about dying.
But I think so. For me, I got into the personal development world because I was trying to answer that question of like, what's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? And coming to realize that over time, and it's been a 25 plus 30 year journey, I think we have really started to get into reading books, understanding psychology. I'm still trying to figure out why I do things that I do, how I can help other people who I think a lot of us are walking around with trauma. My personal experience, I think a lot of people have got a lot of trauma that they're just choosing to ignore or distract themselves with the phone or distract themselves with alcohol or food or whatever.
Or even their success, like sort of full circle,
Completely.
even the success, being financially successful or any other way that proves to the outside world
Right.
that they're acceptable and they're good.
Yeah, or you distract yourself with work so that you don't have to deal with the internal stuff you've got issues with.
Yeah, so there's two things. There's the outcome, which is manifestations of success, like the cars, whatever else, or there's the addictive cycle as a distraction
Yeah.
of just working too hard, exercising too hard, and that. So there are those two kind of levels. But totally agree. Yeah. So sorry.
No, it's great.
I'm cutting in on your.
No,
So
it's all good.
a lot of us are walking around. You were saying kind of with trauma that we're kind of playing out unconsciously in our lives in the way we do things.
Yeah, or just I think, and therefore we don't ever feel relaxed, or I didn't anyway. I'm speaking for me. I didn't ever feel I could relax or calm down or like that kind of just be happy, just being present.
Yeah.
Because if I did, I would then have these things of like, oh, you're not working hard enough, you're not running fast enough, you're running out of time, you've got to hurry up, all of that stuff. And I think it's about making peace with the side of you that is flawed. For me, it's about making peace with that. And that's something I think it's a journey. I don't think there are bits of me I'm really much more comfortable with now. There are bits of me I'm still trying to figure out and still trying to, in my head kind of like make a better version of me.
Isn't that part of the beauty of life?
Yeah.
Like it would be much easier to sort of find these flaws and go, I'd much rather cut them out, or I'd much rather push them away, and I'd much rather grow out of this flaw. But just going through that process of accepting each one and finding yet another flaw. Well, this has been my own journey anyway. Finding yet another. Oh, okay, I've got this problem going on, or I've got this issue, or this way I'm very reactive. Or, it's such an exciting journey. And because I was just thinking about one of the things I wanted to ask you about your business is what drives you then if it's not about kind of getting the external success, more money, more people, whatever else. What is it that
now it's very different? So for the first 10 years of my life, it was absolutely about the accumulation of stuff,
right,
and the proof that I was good enough. That
was linked to that being adopted.
Without question, and that whole narrative of I'm going to show them, right, that kind of story.
And do you think your asthma was a manifestation of that sense of I'm not safe in the world?
Well, that didn't start until I was 7.
Right.
So I didn't have asthma until I was 7. So I'd have to go back and kind of think about what was going on in my world around the time I was 7 that may or may not have led to that. But it didn't really show up until I was 7. I think some of that was environmental factors, not looking after my health, not looking after my diet. Some of it was stress-related, work kind of related things, and some of it was just frankly neglect. I didn't take it seriously, and the biggest thing I really want people to understand if they've got somebody who suffers with asthma, and for whatever reason, is you can manage it, you can have a brilliant life with it, but it can kill you if you don't take it seriously. And I didn't take it seriously. I had this kind of, this is how crazy it was. At one point, the blue inhalers,
yes.
Yeah, right. So like here we are, we're in London, great studio. I don't have an inhaler on me. I don't have an inhaler in my bag, and we're in London. And there was a point in my life where I wouldn't have left the house without one in my bag, one in my coat, one in my car. There'd have been one by my bedside table. I would have had literally 5 or 6 blue inhalers, one in my office. So to wear and then literally, I think I became almost, was almost addicted to that. So I was living in fear almost all the time of what if I have an asthma attack? What, and
it was a dependence.
Yeah, I was completely, it got. One year I think the doctor talked to me, and I'd had 18 of them in a year. And now he was like, "You're going through these," and I wasn't using 18. I was just regularly going to my wife, "Get me another 2 because I can't. I need one in that. I need one in my gym bag, or I need, I don't carry one now. I haven't carried one for years.
Had you had a an attack at that point when you
Yes.
started. So you'd already had the experience of
Yeah.
having an attack, and so you wanted to ensure that you had them around you. So that's understandable.
Yeah, but I think that's treating the symptom, not treating the cause. That, and what it did for me was it created this pattern that part of me was something, that was, it was definitely a part of me that I was flawed with, but it was also a part of me that as long as I had a blue inhaler, I was fine. That was my get out of jail free card. So I was like, as long as I have that, I'm fine.
Yeah.
And
that's still, I suppose, what we come to the perfectly flawed idea that you are still in a phase of wanting to get rid of the symptom,
I didn't accept that it was who I was. I didn't.
Right.
I had an identity in my head that I was a fit person.
Okay.
I played a lot of sport at school. I was, I like to think of myself as a fit person, fit and healthy, and that didn't fit that narrative. So because it didn't fit that narrative, I kind of just pushed it away and denied it and didn't really want to deal with it, and therefore I would only ever treat it if it got serious enough to deal with.
Yeah.
And therefore, I didn't have preventative stuff. I didn't embrace it as, look, it's just part of who you are. Like it's part of who I am. I don't have asthma attacks now because I know how to manage it better, and I've changed my diet significantly, and cut out sugar, and and I sleep better, and there's loads of things I now do that help my body manage that condition in a way that means it doesn't really worry me. And I've come into London, I haven't got an inhaler with me, I'm not worried about that, and no issue, right?
Amazing transformation.
Well, yes, but it is also I think transformation comes from acceptance.
Yeah.
I know, when we run events and you'll have people come up to me, it's very lovely. I'm genuinely flattered when people come and go, this event changed my life. And I go, like, what my job is to, I'll tell you this story because it's one of my favorite ones, but my job, one of my speakers said to me, one of my trainers said to me, he said years ago, he said, if you're ever going to do this for a profession, Paul, you need to understand that people walk into an event, a room, podcast, and they come in with a padlock and they're trying to unlock something, right? They're trying to unlock a future. They're trying to understand themselves. They're trying to unlock their business. They're trying to unlock something. And he said, and for some people, you will be the last digit in the combination. And you will get all the praise because that's the lock pops. It was you that did it. And people come up to you and they'll go, oh, this 2-day event changed my life, or this coaching changed my business forever. And he said, the thing you've got to realize, Paul, is that there were 4 other numbers before that were put in by other people. You just happen to be the 5th one. And he said, and in some events, your job is to be the 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd number for people. And for some events, you're the 5th digit. And he said, if you remember that your job is just to keep helping people put digits in their padlock, and at some point it'll open. He said, but don't ever be triggered by somebody that's been to one of your events, goes to someone else's, and then raves about that one. And he said, because that's just, your job is to just put numbers in the padlock.
I love that.
And it was, for me, that
great analogy.
Yeah, it's just, I think that really just helped me get away from that. Like, that's my job, right? My job is to help put another number in your padlock and help you unlock another little bit of the puzzle you're trying to solve.
I love it. It removes us from that sort of sense of power and validation, and instead we're just in service at that moment to that person, and we may never ever see whether or not it helped them. But because I used to work with people in addiction recovery,
right,
and people used to say, well, what's your success rate? And I kind of go, well, for some people they might relapse 3 times, but maybe that was one fewer time than they would have done.
Yeah.
And for other people, it's just sort of getting them slightly back on the path, and for others, it was like, you changed my life, and and so I really relate to that. But I think that's such a wonderful metaphor to move away from the sense that you've got this massive ego role to play in people's life. Perhaps
I think. Okay, so the way I try and explain this to people is, when I'm on stage, I'm a vessel to transmit and conduct. I'm a conductor. I conduct what's coming down and coming through me. Some of which, if you ask me 10 minutes later what I said, I can't remember. Like, I literally couldn't tell you. That's why we film stuff all the time. It's because when I'm in that state of flow, when I'm connected to that, whether you want to call it a higher source, whether you want to call it the universe, whatever you want to call it, when I'm connected to that, stuff comes to me and through me in the same way that artists talk about writing songs, and they'll go, oh, this song came down to me and I wrote it in 10 minutes and that was a gift. And stuff comes to me and through me, and my job is to share it. It's not to hoard it. It's not to keep it to myself. It's to share it. And it'll land for some people. It'll land for some. It won't for others. But my job is to keep sharing it in the hope that I give you something that goes into your padlock and it helps you move one step forward to closer to unlocking stuff. And the people who get the fifth number when they're with me, I'm blessed. I genuinely feel blessed and grateful to have had the opportunity to be a meaningful part in that journey. But I'm also very aware that I'm grateful to the 4 other speakers or coaches or trainers or podcast hosts who helped put the other 4 numbers in before that event. And I'm always very just cognizant of that, because nobody succeeds on their own, and no teacher, trainer, coach, mentor. Our job is to just keep moving people forward, however small that movement is, but that's our job.
That reminds me of what you said earlier about every dream needs a team.
Yep.
The team that's required to put the 5.
Yeah, and that was the biggest thing that I took away when I to sort of finish the asthma element of it. So
Yeah.
was it 11 years ago? So I was 42 years old. By external measurable successes, you'd have said I was doing all right. And then I had a business that went into administration. It was the first time I'd ever failed, something which was for me a very hard thing to deal with and process. It became very messy, and there was a lot of personal abuse specifically aimed at me. I don't mind that. I was okay with it, but my wife, it was aimed at her too. She took it very badly. And so that stress was just ramping up and ramping up and ramping up. And for those, if you've never been involved in a legal experience like that, where a business is in administration, you are legally not allowed to say things as a director. So then everybody just thinks you're trying to, not share what's going on. By law, you can't. And therefore, you're advised by lawyers not to comment, which then just leads people to spin their own narratives about what's going on. And so there was all of that pressure building up. And of course, there's a massive fear running in me, because at that point, I'm 10 years into the career of being a speaker, business coach around business, and, like how to grow a successful business. And it's about to go public that I've just had a business fail. And I remember being terrified about, this is going to end my career. No one's going to want to come and listen to me after this. I'm supposed to be perfect, right? And I think that's one of the pressures that I think the industry can do to people, is like we're supposed to be perfect, right? If we're going to dish out advice. And I had that was the story I was running in my head. I was terrified of it. And that escalated to bank holiday weekend. Was getting very short of breath, having very kind of stress related. Bless my wife, she burnt some food and there was a massive amount of smoke in the kitchen, which I made the mistake of walking into, which kind of just made it all worse. I remember going upstairs to the bedroom. I remember thinking, I've had asthma attacks before. This is different. This is worse. This is not good. And I remember this sheer kind of feeling of panic of this could be the end of this. This could be game over. And I remember saying to my wife, get an ambulance, like call an ambulance. Like I'd been hospitalized with asthma before, so I knew what that felt like. And I was like, this is different. This is chest pains. This is pain down the left arm. This is different.
How did you feel about the potential of this being game
Terrified.
over?
Terrified. Like anybody who says otherwise, in my opinion, if you're, I was 42 and I was looking down, I was thinking, I'm about to die. This is it. And there's that wonderful poem that says we're all in a line waiting to ascend to wherever we go next, and none of us know how long we have, and it's not based on age. None of us are guaranteed to get to 70 or 80, right? My dad's 90, bless him. None of us are guaranteed of that, right? But we're all in the line. We just don't know when we get to the front of the line. And I was like, this is it. This could be it. I'm done. And I was absolutely scared, like terrified. I've been worried about dying ever since I was like 6 months old. It had been an inner fear of mine, and I'm manifesting this fear right now, and I'm about to live it. And I'm like, and there's all kinds of stuff going around in my head. I'm about to be on my own. I'm about to be like all of that, which just amped the panic attack.
I was going to say, does that amplify the asthma as well?
Yeah, completely. Yeah. So now I'm really struggling for breath. There's there's a great motivational speaker in America who says when you want success badly enough, as though if you were drowning as badly as you wanted to breathe. And I was like, I know exactly what he's talking about, because I know exactly how hard I felt it to like, I just wanted to breathe. I was like, I don't care about anything else right now. I just want oxygen. I just want to breathe. And and it was a panic attack. It was a full blown panic attack. And I remember saying to my wife, call the ambulance. And obviously then they put them on the phone with you, don't they? Start asking you questions. And I'm like, this is like, I can't breathe. Asking me questions right now is the daftest thing you can do. I can't answer you because I can barely breathe. And that just escalated it. And I'm a great believer that sometimes fate lends a hand. And, I was very lucky. It was a Sunday night. It was a bank holiday Sunday night, and there was a paramedic that was on the way back off shift. So they were on the way back to the ambulance station. And because they were literally driving past the end of my road, my son who was 9 at the time, bless him, my wife sent my son down to stand at the end of our drive and wave at him, because they said, look, he's coming past. If you can flag him down, we'll tell him to look for you. But if you can flag him down and he can find you, we'll bring him straight in. So there's a 9-year-old kid now responsible for stopping a paramedic to save his dad's life. Like, I hate what I did to him on that night was just what he experienced, I'm sure has had a profound impact on his life. So there I am, and I'm pretty sure I'm done. I remember then. I remember sort of like I had this really. I had weird thoughts go through my head at that point. Like, this is all over, and I was like, oh, I'm really going to be annoyed I didn't get to do this or do that. And it was experiences mainly. It wasn't stuff. It was experiences. And then I had this really weird one. I was like, oh, I wish I'd taken my son to school in a Lamborghini. I didn't own a Lamborghini. Where did that come from? It was just some random thing that kind of came in my head. I was like, oh well. And then I was like, no, this is it. I'm done. And so there was a level of panic, and then so I took the blue inhaler, and I lost count, but I lost count at 12 shots. So I took 12 shots of this thing, and it turns out you can overdose on those, which I didn't know. Nobody mentioned that to me before. So I took 12 shots in a state of absolute panic, and as I collapsed on the bathroom floor, thinking, "This is it, game over. This is where it ends."
Where was your wife?
Was watching, stood at the door watching it happen. Which, there's a whole other piece to that as well, bless her. And so that she was watching me collapse on the floor, and the paramedic literally arrived. That my son flagged him down. He came upstairs. As he arrived at the door, I remember seeing him arrive at the door, and then I blacked out, and I don't remember anything else after that. Other than I remember that wherever I went after that, it was the most peaceful, calming experience I've ever had in my life. It went from intense panic and fear to, oh, okay, this is all right. This is okay. It's all right. We're all, everything's all right. You're gonna be okay. To feeling, and I can only describe it as a feeling. It was a feeling of warmth. It was a feeling of like support from my mum, who had passed due to cancer a few years before, and I felt her presence, and I felt very kind of grounded. And then I felt I had this conversation, and it wasn't like I was talking to a person. It was just a conversation, right? Which was, so do you want to stay? Do you want to go? And I remember vividly being offered a choice. And in my head, I was like, okay. And it was, if I stay here, no hard feelings. That was that. That was your journey,
Did you see anything at this point? Was there like a sense of visual perception? Or
not really. I tend to, it was a feeling. I tend to think I'd like to have a story that went, I saw a bright light, and it was, and I don't have that. I just have a feeling. But I remember a kind of a dialogue of some description, and it was, well, you can go back, but if you go back, there are no guarantees. Could get worse. Could be, life could go great. Life could go terrible. There are no guarantees. You need to understand, if you go back, it's your choice. And there's a really powerful lesson here for me about, like the power of choice. Like, we all have a choice, but we're not guaranteed the outcome of that choice. And or you can stay, and that's that. And if it ends here. And I remember thinking to myself, it's like, I'm 42. I really don't want to sort of go out on the bathroom floor and this is the way it ends, And I jokingly tell the story that my wife had watched me go from, when you're struggling for air, you go blue. I think we'll get the colors right, but it's blue first, then it's white, and then purple when you're right at the end of like oxygen starvation. And I always laughingly joke that at least I was on brand if I was about to go out, but it was that serious. It was like 90 seconds from brain damage
So how
and
long were you?
4.5 minutes.
4.5 minutes without breathing,
Yeah.
or without?
Yeah. Well, the interesting thing is actually, the specialists talked about this. He said it's very unusual because I'd overdosed on the inhaler. What I'd done is I'd basically sent my heart into steroid shock, essentially. So interestingly, it was still firing electrical impulses, which was a real savior. So I didn't. I actually was, my heart wasn't pumping, but it was still firing electrical impulses, so my brain was still fully fine. Um, and therefore, when the heart was restarted 4.5 minutes later, actually there was very little tissue damage. There was no tissue damage. There was nothing that was lasting from that side of things. They spent 6 months monitoring because they were terrified that I was, anybody under 45. It's a pretty, here's the stat that blew my mind. Is like I think it's about less than 3% or 1%. It's a tiny amount of at-home heart attacks survive, and less than 1% of those are under 45. So, like in terms of a gift to be here, I'm so blessed every day I get up. If I've had a bad day, I'm like, yeah, but you had a day. It's like, yeah, but you nearly didn't get any of it. So it's like, okay, miss a train, yeah, and realistically, it's like, this was a day that was a gift every single day, and therefore, just be grateful you get the day. What happens with it? Sometimes it'll be great, and sometimes there'll be challenges, but you nearly didn't get any of this.
Before we talk about the impact that had on you subsequently, which would be very interesting to hear about, it just reminds me of in Train Spotting at the end of it, Renton goes, choose life. I chose life, and that was his way out of his kind of addiction. It was that choice, and I really, in yours, I was really struck by that active decision. It seemed so pivotal that you, up until that point, perhaps didn't choose life, as so many of us don't. We're not choosing to be in our marriages. We're not choosing to be in our businesses. We're not choosing. We're just we find ourselves there.
Yeah.
And we find ourselves in life.
Yeah.
And we just kind of go, okay, you may have made some choices earlier on, but we're not on a daily basis saying I'm making this choice to be alive.
Yeah. Well, I think there's so many. Yeah. Such a great point. I mean, so, I was offered that choice. And I went, no, I want to go back. I want to go back. I want to go back and do it differently. I want to learn from this. I want to go back. And the minute I made that decision, I was in my body. It wasn't like, sure, want to check in, make sure you're happy. There was none of that. It was like, you want to go back? Bang, you're in. And I just remember, I remember landing in my body. That's how it felt. And I remember the paramedic hitting me again and then me throwing up on him, to which he was immensely excited and impressed and happy because that meant I was alive and I was back. And I remember that. And I was like, okay, right, we're back.
So the paramedic thought he had saved you, but actually your choice.
I like to think both of us had a hand in it, right?
Yeah.
Because if he hadn't done what he had done, I think my body wouldn't have been able to handle me coming back as well as it handled it. So I like to think it was both of us. I don't think it was just me on my own. I think it was both of us. But it was, there's the part of that. There's the part of my brain that goes, remember, my wife will tell you this, like we've had this massively intense experience. They've seen me nearly die. We're getting in the back of the ambulance to go to the hospital. And she remembers vividly me turning to her and saying, this will make a great story from stage. She's looking at me like, what are you thinking about? That fool right now. And I go, oh, this will be a great story, to tell everyone. And it was like, even in that moment, I'm going, yeah. How can I use this to make a point? And
do you think that's a good thing, or do you think there's something?
I think it's just that. I think it was just my way of processing it. Yeah. Actually, I don't know if it was. I don't think it was bad. I just think it was funny that I was going, oh great, I can use this as a story, And I think it was funny. I think it was just, it made me human. I think it made me realize that actually, we're all going to have struggles and we're all going to have things that are parts of us that are flawed. But if we resist them and we don't integrate them, then they can really damage us. And I think, I'd been absolutely resisting the identity. Like, I have asthma, I have it. I need to learn to manage it. But I'm super healthy with it. And I think it's a core identity for me was like that shifted as a result of that choice. And I'm immensely grateful that I made that choice because, crazy life, the way the life rolls out. And 12 months later, my wife has a blood infection that goes into her brain. She ends up having a full-blown seizure, rushed into, she was in a coma for 21 days. And I'm absolutely sure, without question, I mean, there was 3 months of rehab after that. She's been left with a condition called aphasia, which obviously I don't know if you've seen the press, but Bruce Willis has it and stuff. Which she will never recover from that. It's a permanent brain injury. But I look back at that and I go, two things the universe absolutely knew. Number one was if it didn't sort my ego out first, I couldn't have handled that. I'm convinced of that. The version of me before and after my own kind of what I call heart reboot would have been the kind of person that couldn't have handled that trauma for her. I would have probably just upped and gone, that's too much for me, I'm out. I just don't think I could have handled it. Whereas because I had chosen to come back, whatever the outcome was, good, bad, and like there was no guarantees, right? The fact that I was there every day and I was in the hospital every day with her and I was doing that and I was like, I chose this, so I'm just grateful that I was here, because if I wasn't, my son would be in care right now. And therefore I approached that whole experience of her, going through that, being in a coma and all the battles we had with the doctors and all the stuff like that. I came at it from a place of complete gratitude that I was there for that, for her and for him. Whereas, had I decided to almost be, I'm not sure if this is the right word, but in my language, almost a bit selfish and go, yeah, I'm going to hang out, in this nice place where, I'm safe, and the pain of what I'm dealing with in the physical world is gone. That's gone. I look back on that and go, that was the best decision I ever made. And I think sometimes the life is about choices, and we can choose to come from a place of service, or we can choose to come from a place of ego. And I think that's the constant choice battle of like, which bit's going to win in your brain. Are you going to prioritize others, or are you going to prioritize yourself? And I think it's hard, because I think a lot of society, especially at the minute, is wanting leaders to be, it's all about ego, right? That's there is a proliferation around the world of I would say high ego based leadership at the moment,
and they get rewarded for it. I mean, the more ego based and short term and narcissistic people are, it seems to stand a lot of people in very good stead. Maybe not in their soul, but in their external manifestations of.
I think it depends. I mean, we never know, really, do we? I mean, you never really know. I mean, that's where I go back to that the classic kind of text, the sort of Napoleon Hill stuff. Like, success is not about power control; it's about impact. Actually, it's about contribution. It's about what contribution can you make while you're on this planet, and that's what drives. You asked me a question earlier. What drives me now? That's what drives me now. It's like, how many people can I help? How many things can I share? And the version of me a year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. I like to think I'm doing the ultimate testing and measuring at the moment. I had 42 years. That didn't work out very well the way I did it. So I'm now going, right, well, okay, let's just change the input for the next 42 years. Let's look after my health. Let's come from a place of trying to add value to as many people as possible. Let's create as many things as I can in the time I've got available, and see what I can do in that 42-year period, which would be like the ultimate test and measure, right? Of like, oh, yeah, okay, tried it that way. Not so well. Tried it this way. Oh, that seems to be a better output. And, but for me, I think it's just that, it's kind of being okay with not being okay, actually. That's, for me, that's like, like any of us, I have good days, I have bad days. I have days when I wake up and I go, oh God, this is really hard, or what I'm trying to do is difficult, or God, am I really going to be good enough to make this work? Or, if I put this out into the world, is anybody going to like it? All of that kind of interferes every time. But it's, I look at it at the end of the day and I ask myself, like, the question of, okay, did I learn something today? Did I help someone today in some way, shape, or form? Did I help someone today? Did I grow today? Did I learn? Did I grow myself? Did I learn something? Yeah. And did I feel like I created more of a positive input in the world in the day that I had. And if I can do that, if I can say yes to all those things, then I'm going to go to bed and feel like, yeah, that was a day, that was a good day, that was a good day. And there are some days when you go, no, yeah. Sometimes I learn, don't do that, you know, So don't drive there, or don't try that again, you know, like but that's that whole kind of. I think we're so obsessed, and I definitely was for a while, so obsessed with perfection.
Wow. Well, also, I think so. There are two things. There are the lessons learned, and then that you learn and you grow from, and then you hopefully don't make that same mistake too many times again. And that's kind of one way of making our decisions. But the other thought I had was around kind of flow and instinct.
Mm.
So we kind of touched on it a little bit earlier around how we make decisions because they feel like the right thing to do.
Yeah. So I became obsessed with team sort of, because I realized after what happened to me that the reason I got so stressed out is because I had been my leadership style was terrible. Like it was bad. It was massively controlling. You could ask. I didn't realize until afterwards, and when we had very honest conversations as a team, that two of the people who worked for me were actively looking for other jobs at the time, which was entirely my responsibility because I had put them in the wrong roles and managed them terribly and didn't trust them. And I have a side of my profile that is very controlling, and in certain environments that can be really, really helpful, right? So if you're running a big event, you need to have a level of control on what's going on, but you also need to have a level of trust. And I think, for me, if you take the word trust, buried in the middle of the word trust is the word us. And therefore, if you're going to trust, it's about us. And this is about kind of like, for me, it's about understand. You have to understand who you are first before you can understand the people that you're going to lead. And they need to understand your leadership style and which bits you're brilliant at, which bits you contribute, massively, and then which bits are the shadow self, or which bits are the flip side of that. So there's a massive side of me that is incredibly energetic, passionate about what I do, creatively, I think I've got a creative flow I can tap into. But there's also a side of me that gets obsessed about details that most people in an event, if you've never crewed one of our events before, you're like, why does he care about that? It's because I'm striving for perfection. I think in the understanding that we'll hit greatness, but we won't hit perfection. But sometimes I just get frustrated, because I'm like, that's the vision. And I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a vision and then get frustrated because they can't manifest the vision quick enough. I'm always like, well, it takes 9 months to make a baby, right? It's like, well, you want to rush it and like go 4 months. I want a baby in 4 months. It's like, well, no, it takes 9 months. And for some entrepreneurs, it's going to take 2, 3, 4 years to build the vision that they want to build. And you can't do it in 6 weeks. And it doesn't matter how hard you work. And I think, I remember having this conversation with somebody recently. It was like, and he was like, I want to get this done by the time I'm 44. I was like, okay, you're 42, right? And I'm looking at him and going, I said, okay, great. So let's imagine, you hit your goals, you sell your business, you're 44 years old. What are you going to do then? And he goes, I don't know. I was like, why are we in a rush? Like, what's the hurry?
Yeah.
You're 44 years old. You're going to have, if we do this that fast, you're going to risk burning yourself out. You're going to risk your relationships for sure. And probably your health, because they're the things that people tend to sabotage on the way to getting so-called materialistic success. And I said, and you'll be 44.
And it's an arbitrary time scale.
Yeah.
But it reminds me of SMART goals. And there's, obviously the T stands for time-based or timely. And I've always had a little bit of a problem with that, because how do you know how long that goal is going to take?
Well, you're also not trusting the universe that there might be a way faster way to do it, right? So I've always had a challenge with the SMART thing. It's never really worked for me. I think it's a formula that doesn't necessarily stack up, because like when it's smart, measurable, achievable. Well, like, what the hell? Like, for me, it's like the whole point of goal setting. Otherwise, if you talk about stuff that Google was always, moonshots and going for big stuff, it's like you're supposed to set goals that are unachievable. So your brain has to go, how the hell am I going to do that? Well, I don't know. And
which is the 10 times theory.
Yeah.
Isn't it? Just really just go massive, and then you'll find a different way.
But that's also because people don't understand how. So this is something I haven't shared before, that I always think when I share it with one-to-one clients, it makes a massive difference. So if you take a compass, north, south, east, west, So lots of the teachings from Eastern Europe have never made it properly across to Western Europe. So, like, for example, Eastern Europe doesn't believe in a straight line time theory, whereas we do in the West. So we're very much a linear time approach. So therefore, if you miss the opportunity, you feel really stressed. Oh, I missed that, or I was too old now, and I all of that. And that's
Is this Eastern Europe or just the East in general?
well, it's Eastern philosophy. Take it that way, right? So they don't think of time as linear. They think as time as looped, right? So it's infinite because it is, and therefore, if you miss it this time around, don't worry, it'll come around again. And that takes the pressure off this kind of obsessive. Yeah, but I've only got a certain amount of time, and I've got to get it done, or else I miss it. And it's like, well, okay, but if you miss this, that it will be around. Something else will come along because that's the way the universe works, right? And the challenge is that most people ask, they don't understand the compass as it relates to flow and energy and how you should use it to process things. Goals being a good example, right? So most people will say, great, what do I want to achieve, right? Let's pick something. Pick a goal for a minute. Just any particular goal.
I want to have a New York Times bestseller.
Amazing, right? Fantastic. So you go, great. Now, there's a part of your brain that will immediately kick off and go, oh, yeah, but we don't know how to do that, right? Well, the challenge is that you're going from the north point on the compass, which is the true north, the vision piece.
Yes.
And you're going straight round to not going north, south, east, west. You're going northwest.
Right.
And the West energy is very much the how question.
Right.
And it's all the detail and the technical and the plans and like how, it's the how bit, how we would make it. It's the mechanics.
Someone told me the other day, if you want to do that, you've got to have X thousand followers if you want to get a New York Times bestseller, and that kind of knocked a bit of wind out of my sail a bit.
No, you actually needed about 200 grand, but that's a completely different conversation because most New York Times bestseller, the whole thing's rigged anyway, and you can buy your way onto a New York Times bestseller list and all of that stuff.
But anyway,
forget the how question is what stops most people because they say like I want to get a promotion, right?
Yeah.
I want to be a promoted in the next 12 months, or I want to buy a house in the next 12 months, right?
Yeah.
And if we go from the idea, the inspiration, the vision piece, and we go, yeah, but how? Kills the energy, we're dead, we don't try anything, we just feel stuck.
Yes.
And we go, oh, yeah, but how am I ever going to afford a house? But the challenge is at that point, all you're operating from is your own limited view of resources. You're not tapping into the universe and abundance of possibility and potential that you don't even know anything about yet. So the way that I teach clients to answer this is we'll go, okay, great. So you want to be a New York Times bestseller.
Let's say I want to be a millionaire because you've just...
Well, New York Times bestseller.
Okay.
Let's just play that one through because it might serve you in the process, right? So but if, you can add whatever goal you've got in there, right?
Yeah.
So, run a marathon, doesn't matter. Okay. So you go, okay, great. So go north-south because that's where the energy flows in a compass. Yeah. So we go from the north to the south. So we go north, right? There's best time. When? We ask what's the what question? What do we want to achieve?
Yeah.
Then we have to ask the when question, not the how question that comes later. We ask the when question.
Okay.
So when do you want to achieve that?
Well, I'd say within the next 2 years.
Okay. So within 24 months.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Or less, or quicker. Because you should always, if you're going to put an affirmation out in the world, you should always stipulate or faster because the universe might have a way of doing it faster that you just don't know about, right? Yeah. So it's like within 24 months or less. Yes?
But I don't know whether I'm making the mistake your person made on saying 44. So I could say 3 years just to give myself some leeway.
12 quarters.
Yeah.
That's 12 quarters. That's quite cool. Right. They're a universal. There's energy. There's energy attached to numbers, and 12 is a very powerful spiritual number.
Right.
Hence why I use it a lot in a lot of things I do. So 12 is a very
12
powerful.
quarters is
so
south.
12 quarters. 12 quarters. That's the timeline, right?
Yeah.
Okay, great. First of all, you can breathe at that point because you're not trying to do it in the next 6 weeks.
Yeah.
So you go, okay, 12. Great.
Love that you say you can breathe because that links to the asthma and being able to breathe in the world.
Most people go, I want to achieve this goal in the next 6 months, and it puts so much pressure on their system that it compresses, it doesn't expand.
You stop breathing, don't you? When you're stuck, you go, I don't know what to do.
Yeah. So great. We've got the goal, we've got the timeline, right? So north, south, now we go east. Now the east is the who question. The who. Who can help? Who's done it before? Who can you talk to who's already achieved the New York Times bestseller? Because whatever your goal is, someone's already done it.
Yeah.
Right? So,
who do I have to be?
Yeah, who do I have to be? So who am I going to have to be? I'm going to have to be a bigger influencer, or I'm going to have to be somebody with 10,000 followers or 100,000 followers. Okay, so that's who I'm going to need to be.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have to be, I'm going to need to become a best-selling author in my head first before I can manifest it in the world, right?
Yeah.
And but that who question is like, who can I talk to? Who can I connect with? Who can I network with? So then you'd start doing things like, okay, great. Let's start following New York Times bestsellers on LinkedIn, and then eventually connect with them, and then say, hey, could I interview you for half an hour? I'd love to actually interview you about how I'm on my podcast, and then start asking them like, look, well, could I pay you for half an hour of your time to tell me how you did it? You could very quickly understand, and the who gives you the how. The who will give you the how. And that's the trick is that we feel like we're supposed to figure it out.
Yeah.
And the minute you stop going, I've got to figure this out, and you go, oh, no, I just need to find the people to ask. This is why, for years I've said your network is your net worth, but most people don't invest in relationships, connections, networks. They don't invest time, energy, effort, and money in them to build them because they're thinking transactional. So, like, for example, I was having this conversation with a client yesterday. He said, oh, loads of people try and connect with me on LinkedIn. And I said, what do you do? He said, oh, if I can't see, they're just trying to sell me something, I don't connect with them. That's a bit short-sighted, isn't it? And he said, well, why? He said, oh, they're just going to try and sell me something. I said, yeah, true, they might do. But I said, but those people might be in your network and they might move to another career or another position in 2 or 3 years' time, and then they might have something you want, or they might be connected to somebody that you'd like to sell to. I said, you're blocking the flow. I said, if people are coming to you for whatever reason, there's a connection piece there. They're attracted to your energy that you're putting out and what you're saying. So why would you then block that flow? And he was like, oh, I just thought they were trying to pitch me. I said, they might be, but I said, if 1 in 10 isn't, and they just, and then you go, oh, by the way, did you also know, I see you've got that product. By the way, we do things for your industry. So if you ever need any help with that, let me know. You can reverse the conversation, the polarity, but it's about going, look, I'm open to conversations with people because I don't know what, like,
but I mean, you do need boundaries, don't you? Because we don't have infinite amount of, or maybe we do have infinite amount of time, but, in terms of managing numbers of people on LinkedIn who are.
But there's tools for that, and I've just launched a growth agency to help people manage all of that because there are tools and technologies. That's the how bit. See, the how bit then gets the stuff. So you go, oh yeah, great, but how am I going to manage it? But it's like there's somebody who knows how to do that, or there are tools.
Dr. Ben Hardy, I don't know whether you've come across his work, but he wrote a book called Who Not How.
Who Not How.
Yeah, which is great. I mean, there are so many different things we can.
Does that help though? Just that north south, because you wanted to talk about flow, and by the way, there's a piece that sits in the middle of north, south, east, and west, which is the why question. Like, why does it matter? Like, why do I want to do it in 3 years? Because then you map why is it important for you to be a New York Times bestseller? Then you go, why do you want to do it in 3 years, not 5? Why does 3 years matter? So you get really clear on the why. Why is it going to matter to the people you're talking to help them? Why are they going to care about helping you?
Yes.
Right. And then what you move across and go, okay, great. So how am I going to do it? But why
do it that way?
Yeah. Why do it that way?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, so it might be that you find out that actually partnering with somebody who's already a New York Times bestseller actually would be the fastest way to do it. So it's like, okay, well, why do I need to do it on my own? Becomes a different question.
Yeah. So go to that at the end, go to the how at the very end. And
that's the last bit of the conversation, because that's the bit then you can start to execute on, but you're executing on it from a point of knowledge that you gain from somebody who's been where you want to go and achieve the result you want to have.
Well, we've covered so much ground in our time here today, and there are so many different little avenues I'd love to go down, but I'd love most of all for you to tell me, you've already glanced across Perfectly Flawed as a concept quite a few different times, but what does it really mean to you, being perfectly flawed? You talked about being perfect at one point, wanting to be perfect. What does be flawed mean?
I think, do you know what I think is really interesting about it is I think it's a bit like the yin and the yang. If you look at the black and the white, the dark and the light, it's the same thing. It's like that. It's perfect, but we're all flawed. Everything is, the best stuff has scratches, scrapes, dings on it, because each one of those scratches, scrapes, dings on us, they're our stories, actually. They're the stories that make us who we are. So that element, is it flawed or is it just story? Is it just a story? Is it a scar or is it a story? For me, that's, we're what's perfect anyway? Like, what is it anyway? And for me, it's like, we're all we're all fine. The minute you can look yourself in the mirror and go, do you know what? I'm okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might not be great. I might not have the body I want yet, and yet is the 3 most powerful words, in my opinion, out there.
3 most powerful letters.
Yeah, sorry, letters. Thank you
Yeah,
very much. As a
yeah, yeah.
dyslexic person, I would obviously think that's 3 words, but it's that yet piece.
Yes.
It's like I haven't achieved that yet. It doesn't mean you can't.
Yeah.
Just you're in the process of.
I notice as you're saying yes, I'm going yes, which is also a powerful 3 letters, isn't it?
It is, and you know, I think one of my I'll finish on this because it made me smile once you know that whole kind of thing at school because I'm dyslexic, so an element of that is you could see it as a flaw or you can see it as a superpower.
Yes.
I think too many kids at school are told it's a flaw and it's a superpower
Mm.
because I couldn't do what I do as a business strategist without the dyslexia in my brain. Without question, it helps me see things I would never be able to normally see and opportunities I would never normally be able to identify. So it's 100% a superpower.
So it's a perfect flaw.
Yeah.
Isn't it? It's a perfect flaw. People think it's a flaw.
It's perfect for what I'm trying to do. If I was trying to be a copywriter, it would be a terrible skill set to have, and it wouldn't. But so I think you've got to match the quote unquote flaw with the opportunity.
Yes.
Because then it's perfect.
It's like a jigsaw puzzle piece. If you're trying to put the jigsaw puzzle piece into the wrong place, it's never going to fit. But if you go, well, that hole, that shape, that bump is exactly perfect for that position.
For that position, yeah. So I think I think for me it's a bit. It's exactly that. You're perfectly flawed. You've just got to find the where your flaw bit fits into the universe so that it makes sense and the whole thing makes sense. The picture makes sense, and you go, oh, now I get it.
Well, that's like the trip of a lifetime, isn't it? You know, where does our particular puzzle piece fit?
Yeah, exactly.
But I've got a final question which I ask everybody, which is, what advice would you give the younger you?
What advice? I'd
What would you say?
stop being in such a hurry, and it'll be fine. Just you'll be okay. You'll be all right. You'll be all right. You're fine as you are. You're not broken. You'll be okay.
For myself, it was like from deeply flawed to kind of going, well, that's perfect. A sense that I was deeply flawed to being perfectly flawed as I am, and you saying you'll be okay. I think those are words that so many people need to hear. You're okay as you are right now.
And just you know, the other thing is just take the pressure off and just enjoy the moment more. Be more present and enjoy the moment. And I think the other thing I would say to myself, the younger version of me, is realize that you have more power to choose than you are recognizing. You have way more power to choose, and it's the most powerful thing you actually have control of is the choice to make, the choices you make and the meaning you give things. That's all choice.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you. It's been a wonderful opportunity.
Thank you to Paul Avins, and thank you for listening. I hope you enjoyed it. I found it really interesting how his near-death experience actually prepared him for dealing with his own wife's illness and for many other challenges that he had to face in his life. And I love that he's been given a second lease of life in his business, but applying it with a much greater and richer amount of spirituality and insight than he ever did before.